How Dubai built the world's most impossible city, and who really paid for it. There is a city that should not exist. Not in the way that all cities, when you think about them carefully enough, seem improbable. The accumulated result of millions of individual decisions, historical accidents, geographical advantages, and the slow accretion of human settlement over centuries. This city should not exist in a more literal sense. The land it sits on was, within living memory, empty desert and shallow sea. The fresh water it consumes does not exist naturally within its borders. It is manufactured, at enormous energy cost, by desalinating the salt water of the Persian Gulf. The temperature for much of the year is high enough to make outdoor work dangerous and outdoor life uncomfortable for anyone not accustomed to it. The region has no significant agricultural land, no forests, no rivers, no natural resources other than oil, and the oil by the time the city was being built, was already running out. And yet there it is. Dubai. A city of nearly 4 million people. The tallest building on Earth. The largest shopping mall on Earth. An indoor ski slope in the middle of the desert. Artificial islands in the shape of palm trees, visible from space. A financial center that processes trillions of dollars in transactions annually. An airport that is one of the busiest in the world. A skyline that 30 years ago did not exist. How did this happen? Who built it? And who paid, not just in money, but in the human cost that tends to get left out of the promotional materials? This is the story of Dubai. All of it. Bell, before we go further, if you find this kind of story valuable, please subscribe right now. Hit the like button, drop a comment below, and turn on notifications so you never miss a documentary like this one. Let's get into it. To understand Dubai, you have to understand the Emirates' history, and the particular moment of fear that transformed it from a modest trading port into one of the most ambitious construction projects in human history. Dubai is one of 7 emirates that make up the United Arab Emirates, a federation established in 1971 when Britain withdrew from its colonial presence in the Gulf. It sits on the southern shore of the Persian Gulf, in a region where summer temperatures regularly exceed 45 degrees Celsius and annual rainfall averages less than 100 millimeters, about the same as the Sahara Desert. For most of its history, Dubai was a small but reasonably prosperous trading port. Its location on the Gulf made it a natural waypoint for trade between the Indian subcontinent, East Africa, and the Persian Gulf region. It had a thriving pearl diving industry. It had a reputation unusual for the region, for openness to trade and to foreign traders, a pragmatic tolerance that was good for business. Oil was discovered in Dubai in 1966. Not in enormous quantities, not like the vast reserves of neighboring Abu Dhabi, which had so much oil that it could afford to be conservative and careful about development. Dubai's oil reserves were modest. They would generate significant revenue for a few decades. And then they would run out. Sheikh Rashid bin Saeed Al Maktoum, the ruler of Dubai from 1958 to 1990, understood this earlier and more clearly than almost anyone. He famously said in a quote that has become the motto of Dubai's development philosophy, "My grandfather rode a camel, my father rode a camel, I drive a Mercedes, my son drives a Land Rover, his son will drive a Land Rover, but his son will ride a camel." The message was stark. Oil was finite. When the oil ran out, Dubai would have nothing, unless it built something else before the oil ran out. What Rashid decided to build was a city. Not just any city. A city so spectacular, so ambitious, so unlike anything else in the region that it would attract, permanently, the investment, the trade, the tourism, and the financial activity that the oil had temporarily provided. He began building the infrastructure of that city decades before it was needed. He built a port, Jebel Ali, which would become one of the largest man-made harbors in the world, before there was sufficient trade to justify it. He built roads. He built an airport. He built a free trade zone that offered foreign companies the ability to operate in Dubai with minimal taxes and minimal regulatory interference. He built the conditions for a city that didn't yet exist. And then his son, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, who became the effective ruler of Dubai in the 1990s and formally assumed power in 2006, built the city itself. The scale and speed of what happened in Dubai between roughly 1995 and 2010 has few precedents in history. In 1990, Dubai's skyline was modest. A few buildings. A functioning but unremarkable city of perhaps 400,000 people. By 2010, Dubai had the tallest building on Earth, the Burj Khalifa, standing at 828 meters, nearly twice the height of the Empire State Building. It had the Palm Jumeirah, an artificial island in the shape of a palm tree, created by dredging sand from the Gulf floor and depositing it in a carefully engineered pattern that created 17 fronds and a surrounding crescent of land, adding nearly 500 kilometers of new coastline to Dubai's geography. It had the Dubai Mall, at the time of its opening, the largest shopping mall in the world by total area. It had an indoor ski slope, Ski Dubai, operating at -1 degree Celsius inside a temperature-controlled dome in the middle of a desert where outside temperatures reached 45 degrees. It had a metro system. A financial center regulated by British common law, operating independently of UAE law. An airline, Emirates, that had grown from a 2-aircraft startup in 1985 into one of the most respected long-haul carriers in the world. A convention center that hosted events drawing hundreds of thousands of visitors from around the world. It had, in short, transformed itself from a modest Gulf trading port into a global city in approximately 20 years. How did it do this? The answer has several components, and each of them raises its own questions. If you are still watching, thank you. Please hit the like button right now, subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment below. We read every comment. Now let's talk about the part of this story that almost nobody discusses. The first component is money. Oil revenues provided the initial capital for Dubai's infrastructure investments. But Dubai was always smarter, or at least more far-sighted, than its neighbors about what to do with that capital. Rather than simply spending the oil revenue on consumption, on subsidies, on government employment, on the visible trappings of wealth, Dubai invested it in infrastructure and in the institutional framework that would attract private investment. The free zones, areas of Dubai where foreign companies could own 100% of their business, pay no corporate taxes, and repatriate profits freely, were crucial. They attracted businesses that would not otherwise have located in the Gulf. Those businesses brought employees. Those employees needed housing, food, entertainment, services. The demand generated by those employees attracted more businesses. The cycle fed itself. Real estate was the engine. Dubai allowed, and actively encouraged, foreign nationals to purchase property in designated areas of the emirate. This was extraordinary in the Gulf context, where property ownership by non-nationals was rare or impossible. The announcement that foreigners could buy property in Dubai triggered an enormous influx of investment capital, primarily from Europe, South Asia, and other parts of the Middle East. Property prices rose. New developments were announced to meet the demand. The rising prices attracted more investors. The cycle fed itself again. By the mid-2000s, Dubai was essentially running a feedback loop in which rising property prices attracted investment, investment funded construction, construction attracted workers and businesses drove demand for more property, and demand drove prices higher. It worked, spectacularly, until 2008. The global financial crisis hit Dubai with particular severity. Property prices fell by 50% or more in some segments of the market. Several major construction projects were halted mid-construction. Dubai World, the state-linked conglomerate that had been the vehicle for many of the most ambitious development projects, revealed that it had approximately $59 billion in debt and could not make its scheduled payments. Abu Dhabi, the oil-rich neighbor that had watched Dubai's rise with a mixture of admiration and skepticism, provided a bailout. $20 billion. With conditions. Quietly, Dubai recovered. The Burj Khalifa, which had been under construction during the crisis, was completed and opened in January 2010. the Palm Jumeirah filled with residents. The Dubai Mall opened and became the most visited building on earth. But the 2008 crisis revealed something important about the Dubai model. The spectacular skyline was real. The buildings were real. The infrastructure was real. But a significant portion of the financing for all of it was borrowed, from international banks, from bond markets, from investors who had assumed that property prices would continue rising indefinitely. Dubai had built one of the world's most remarkable cities partly on debt. And debt, unlike oil or trade or tourism, is not a sustainable foundation. The second component of Dubai's success is geography. Dubai sits at a remarkable intersection of the world's air routes. Flying from Europe to Asia, or from Africa to Asia, Dubai is almost exactly on the way. The development of Emirates Airlines, which grew to operate one of the largest fleets of long-haul aircraft in the world, was not just a business decision. It was a strategic infrastructure investment, designed to make Dubai the transfer hub through which a significant proportion of the world's long-distance air traffic would pass. The strategy worked beyond any reasonable projection. Today, Dubai International Airport is consistently one of the 3 busiest airports in the world by international passenger numbers. The millions of passengers who pass through it annually, many of whom spend a night or two in Dubai on stopovers, generate an enormous amount of economic activity. The geography that makes Dubai a natural air hub also makes it a natural trade hub. The Jebel Ali port, which Sheikh Rashid built decades before it was needed, became one of the largest container ports in the world, processing goods moving between Asia, Europe, and Africa. The free zone around the port attracted logistics companies, manufacturers, and traders who valued the combination of world-class infrastructure and minimal regulatory burden. Dubai positioned itself, deliberately and successfully, as the Switzerland of the Middle East. A stable, well-governed, pragmatic place in a region that was, by the standards of history, often none of those things. Political instability in Lebanon, Iran, Iraq, and elsewhere in the Middle East repeatedly drove wealthy individuals and businesses to seek refuge in Dubai's relatively secure and predictable environment. The third component of Dubai's success, and the one that receives by far the least attention in the promotional materials, is labor. Dubai built itself with foreign workers. This is not unusual. Large construction projects everywhere use migrant labor. What is unusual is the scale, the conditions, and the legal framework under which that labor was, and is employed. Approximately 90% of Dubai's population is foreign nationals. Of those, the largest groups come from South Asia, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka. The construction of Dubai's spectacular skyline was performed overwhelmingly by workers from these countries, recruited through agents in their home countries, transported to Dubai on work visas tied to specific employers, and housed in labor camps on the periphery of the city they were building. The kafala system, the sponsorship system that governs migrant labor in much of the Gulf, gives employers enormous power over workers. Under kafala, a worker's legal right to be in the country is tied to their employer. If they leave their employer without permission, they become undocumented. If they complain about working conditions, they risk deportation. If they are owed wages that are not paid, their legal recourse is limited and slow. The practical consequences of this system have been extensively documented by human rights organizations. Workers who paid recruitment fees of several $1,000s, borrowed from family or from moneylenders at high interest, arrived in Dubai to find that the job they had been promised did not match the reality. Wages lower than promised. Conditions more difficult than represented. The cost of the recruitment fee already deducted from their first months of salary. Workers who wanted to leave, who wanted to go home rather than work in conditions they had not agreed to, often could not. Their passports had been confiscated by their employers. Their return ticket home would cost more than they had. And leaving without their employer's permission would mean deportation and the loss of any wages they were owed. The construction of the Burj Khalifa, the most famous building in Dubai, possibly the most recognizable building constructed in the 21st century, was performed in large part by workers who were paid, according to investigations by human rights organizations, as little as $4 per day. working in summer temperatures that regularly exceeded 40 degrees Celsius, living in labor camps where multiple men shared rooms designed for fewer, with limited access to health care when injured. Workers died. Construction sites in Dubai have fatality rates that are difficult to calculate precisely. The UAE government does not publish comprehensive occupational fatality statistics, but which human rights organizations and journalists have documented in considerable detail. Workers from Nepal, India, Bangladesh and Pakistan have died in Dubai of heat stroke, of falls from buildings under construction, of accidents with machinery, of diseases exacerbated by poor living conditions. The official figures, when they have been published, record many of these deaths as natural causes or cardiac arrest, categories that do not capture the role of heat, exhaustion and working conditions in causing those deaths. The families of workers who died in Dubai often received limited compensation. The legal framework for pursuing claims was complex and tilted against the families. The recruitment agents who had taken fees to send the workers to Dubai often bore no legal responsibility for what happened to them once they arrived. This is not a story that Dubai tells about itself. The story Dubai tells about itself is the story of vision and ambition and transformation. The story of a small emirate that looked at a handful of decades of oil revenue and decided to build something permanent. The story of Sheikh Mohammed's personal drive. He is famous for sleeping only a few hours a night, for appearing unannounced at government offices to check whether officials are at their desks, for setting targets that seem impossible and then demanding that they be met. That story is real. The ambition was real. The vision was real. The results are real. You can see them, touch them, stand at the base of the Burj Khalifa and look up and be genuinely overwhelmed by what human beings have built. But the other story is also real. The men from Kerala and Punjab and the hills of Nepal who mixed the concrete and welded the steel and installed the glass and did it for $4 a day in 40-degree heat and in some cases did not go home. Their story is also part of what Dubai is. A city is not just its buildings. It is also the people who built them, and the conditions under which they built them, and what happened to them afterward. Dubai has changed. In recent years, under pressure from international human rights organizations, from Western governments that have raised concerns, from the reputational costs of the labor conditions becoming globally known, the UAE has made reforms to the kafala system. Workers now have more legal ability to change employers. Passport confiscation has been formally prohibited. Minimum wage requirements have been introduced for some categories of workers. The reforms are real. They are also incomplete. Human rights organizations that monitor conditions in the Gulf continue to document problems: wage theft, unsafe working conditions, inadequate housing, barriers to legal recourse. And the fundamental economic logic that produced the original conditions has not changed. Workers from Nepal, India, Bangladesh and Pakistan still come to Dubai because the wages, low by Gulf standards, are higher than what they can earn at home. The families that receive remittances from those workers depend on that money. The home country governments that receive foreign exchange from those remittances have limited incentive to press hard for better conditions, lest their workers be replaced by workers from other countries with fewer protections. It is a system in which everyone's short-term interests are served by the continuation of conditions that most people, if asked directly, would say are wrong. The World Expo 2020, delayed to 2021 by the COVID pandemic, was held in Dubai. It attracted 24 million visitors. It was, by most measures, a success. It further cemented Dubai's position as a global events destination. In 2023, Dubai hosted COP28, the United Nations Climate Conference. The conference at which the world's nations were supposed to negotiate more ambitious commitments to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions that are warming the planet. Hosted in a city that would not exist without air conditioning. In a country whose economy was built on oil. With the head of the national oil company serving as the president of the conference. The ironies were not lost on observers. Dubai is, in the end, a mirror. It reflects back to the world the things the world most values and the things the world most chooses to ignore. It values spectacle. And Dubai provides spectacle, at a scale and a quality that is genuinely unmatched. It values efficiency. And Dubai delivers efficiency. The airport, the logistics infrastructure, the financial center all operate at levels that cities that have existed for centuries have not matched. It values growth. And Dubai has grown faster, more dramatically, and more visibly than almost any city in human history. And it chooses to ignore the human cost of those things. The workers who built the spectacle. The conditions under which they lived and worked and sometimes died. The legal framework that made those conditions possible and that protected the employers rather than the employed. Dubai did not invent those trade-offs. They exist in every economy. The supply chains that produce the goods sold in Western shopping malls run through conditions that are often not much better than the labor camps on the edge of the Dubai desert. But Dubai made those trade-offs visible, in a way that other cities and other economies managed to obscure. The labor camps are on the edge of the same city as the world's tallest building. The workers who live in them are building the same hotels that the visitors stay in, the same malls that the tourists shop in, the same towers that the investors buy apartments in. The proximity is uncomfortable. It is meant to be. Because the question that Dubai forces us to ask, about who benefits from growth, and who pays for it, and whether the people who pay can be said to have agreed to the price, is not a question that is specific to Dubai. It is a question about how the modern world works. And Dubai just makes it harder to look away. That is the full story of Dubai, the vision, the debt, the spectacle, and the human cost behind it all.